Okay, so let's get into it then. From your experience, what are some historical approaches to healing from sexual betrayal? And really just looking at what damage have those approaches caused and thinking more inside the church with these.
I think I want to start kind of how I entered into this whole arena. It
Mm,
wasn't anything I really chose. What I say is it's a specialty that chose me.
mm,
And so when I needed some information, some help, I was already a trained licensed counselor. I had just left working for a large church in my area where I was directing programs. So this happened, and I started to recognize what I was feeling, and I recognized some of my symptoms. And I went to people that I knew in the area who might understand sex addiction
mm,
and asked them what's there for me. And they gave me some books to read. And in those books, it was describing me as if they knew me
mm,
and with some assumptions about who I was, what my history was. And the model was an addiction model where a partner was automatically assumed to be co-addicted,
mm,
so addicted to the person with the addiction and with behaviors that were symptoms of that addiction.
mhm.
And so that got me thinking, this doesn't sound right. It doesn't fit with my experience or my history. And I just started making myself available to help other people
Mm,
because I couldn't find help for myself. I said, I'll just sit and join with. So I started a group where I just was safe space. And as I was listening to their stories, that's where I started really hearing and understanding the trauma of it. But the original models were addiction related,
mm,
that there was something within the partner, their own history, their own prior maybe abuse in their relationships, that led them to find and be in relationship with someone with
mm,
sex addiction. So it was called the two heat seeking missiles
mm,
approach. And so it's like you're destined. And so how that felt for the partner was there's something wrong with you, or you would not have married someone who would betray you this
mm.
way. And again, from a mental health perspective, that didn't make any sense to me. So that led me then on the road to do research. I went back to get my doctorate, do some research, and that's where I found trauma.
Mm.
And when I started teaching about that on that in around 2005, that's when the field started to change.
Wow.
Yeah, as I was thinking about this question, Trevor, I think the way I would phrase it, and this is what I hear, Dr. Steffens saying, is the approach that a lot of churches and honestly pastors and leaders have taken is to say to the spouse, "You're part of the problem." Whether it was
Mhm.
because of your nature and your
Yeah.
wounds from the past that caused you to marry that person, or even within the relationship of if you were, how often are you having sex, and how are you treating him, or how are you treating her, and if
Mhm.
you only did this, then you could help them, and I hope to believe that from a lot of these leaders, it was well intentioned. They
Mm.
thought they were helping, but it was actually communicating very, very negative messages
Yeah.
to people that were reeling from things of just,
Mhm.
I just found out about my spouse's behaviors,
Yeah.
and I'm supposed to be part of the problem. And I think we just have to be aware that even if we can all acknowledge that none of us are perfect,
Mhm.
and I think maybe that's why it happens in a lot of churches, because we do see in every marriage, yeah, both people have things they can work on and ways they can contribute to a healthier marriage.
Mhm.
But when we're talking about this kind of addiction recovery, to then apply that same thinking to, well, you're part of the problem too, just sets the couple off on I think, a very, very challenging path that we've seen leads to a lot of pain
Yeah.
and disillusionment from that betrayed spouse. And the other method I was going to mention, and I don't know if you want to speak to this as well, Barbara, but for a lot of churches, I think the historical approach has been nothing.
Mm.
Like what,
Yeah.
do something for the betrayed spouse. We don't do that. Like we just work with the
Yeah.
one who has the problem or is
Right.
the addict or the struggler. And there's kind of an assumption of the spouse, I guess, just figures it out. I don't know. I'm not sure
Yeah.
what our strategy was there, but I think a lot of churches, including the kind of churches I grew up in, would have just said, we don't really help that person.
Yeah.
We just help the one with the problem, the
Mhm.
struggler
Mhm.
or the addict.
Mm.
Yeah, I would agree. The silence approach for the partner. I've heard so many women say, I would see people rally around my spouse and
Mm.
pray for him
Yeah.
and offer him support and accountability. And it was like I was standing there, and now I have kind of like the scarlet A So, or the Scarlet S, spouse of the addict,
Mm.
but no one wants to talk to me. Everyone's
Yeah.
afraid of my emotions. They don't know what to do with me. And so they're just left hanging there. So I think that's a real experience still today in a lot of churches.
Yeah. And I
And
mean,
again, it's because they don't know what they don't know on
exactly.
how to provide assistance.
Yeah, and I think that it's easy in this conversation to villainize the church, that somehow this is negligent, which I think in a lot of churches you can make that statement based on, what they do, how they handle situations. But a lot of this too is just a call for churches to be more informed, for church leaders, for counselors inside the church to be informed with the trauma that is experienced with sexual betrayal, so that we know how to and that's the whole reason we're having this conversation, is to better understand this so that we can help people who are in this situation.